Tensions were high in the small suburban town of Arlington. Jason Montgomery had grown up there, a quiet, tight-knit community where everyone knew everyone else's business. But even though he was one of them, attending the same schools, going to the same parks, and living in the same cul-de-sacs, Jason always felt like an outsider. As a young black man in a predominantly white town, he'd grown used to the quiet stares, the subtle but cutting remarks, and the exclusion from social circles that he should have naturally belonged to. But nothing hurt as much as what happened when he announced his engagement to Sarah O'Connell. Sarah was white, blonde, and from a well-known family that had lived in Arlington for generations. The two had met during college, and their love blossomed quickly, overcoming what seemed like insignificant challenges. They were a perfect match. Their personalities balanced one another, and their love was deep and genuine. But when they returned to Arlington to share the good news, the cracks in the town's friendly facade began to show. It started with whispers. Jason could feel the judgment in the air whenever he and Sarah walked hand in hand through town. At first, it was just a few lingering glances, neighbors avoiding eye contact, but it quickly escalated. Sarah's parents, known for their strong opinions, didn't even try to hide their displeasure. Her mother, Donna, was particularly vocal. "I didn't raise my daughter to marry someone who doesn't fit in with our family," she told Sarah coldly one evening at dinner. Her father, a man of few words, simply shook his head in silent agreement. Sarah was heartbroken but determined. "I love Jason, and I'm going to marry him whether you approve or not," she declared. Her defiance was admirable, but it only seemed to push her parents further away. When wedding invitations were sent out, Sarah's parents were the first to respond, with a flat-out refusal to attend. They made it clear that they couldn't support a union they didn't believe in. As word spread through town, the responses started trickling in, each rejection more stinging than the last. Friends from high school, neighbors, and even extended family members declined, citing flimsy excuses, though everyone knew the real reason. Jason and Sarah were left with a guest list that was shockingly short. Most of Jason's family lived out of state, and while they were overjoyed for the couple, they were too far to make the trip. It seemed as though the wedding would be a small, lonely affair. One evening, Sarah sat on the couch, her head in her hands. "How could they do this to us? How could they be so cruel?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Jason knelt beside her, gently taking her hands in his. "We knew it would be hard," Jason said softly, though his heart ached as much as hers. "But love is stronger than hate. We'll get through this. Our wedding isn't about them. It's about us." As the wedding day approached, Jason and Sarah decided not to let the negativity ruin their plans. They found a beautiful venue just outside town, a small garden with a chapel that overlooked a serene lake. It was far from the grand celebration they had once envisioned, but it was perfect in its own way. The morning of the wedding arrived, and the day was clear and bright. Jason stood in the garden, adjusting his tie nervously. He tried to shake off the disappointment of knowing that so many people had chosen to let prejudice cloud their judgment. But just as he was about to head inside to prepare for the ceremony, he heard a voice calling his name. He turned to see a familiar face, Mrs. Thompson, his high school English teacher. She was walking toward him, smiling warmly. Behind her were a few more familiar faces, old classmates, the local librarian, and even Mr. Callahan, the grumpy owner of the town's general store. They were followed by more and more people until a crowd began to form. Jason's heart skipped a beat. "We couldn't let you get married without some of us showing up to support you," Mrs. Thompson said, embracing Jason. "But I thought—" "Not everyone in this town is stuck in the past," she said, cutting him off. "Some of us see you for who you are, Jason, and we're here to celebrate with you." Tears welled in Jason's eyes as he watched the group continue to grow. It wasn't the entire town, but it was enough to fill the seats in the chapel. He saw people he hadn't spoken to in years, some he had assumed would never support him, and even a few unfamiliar faces, all there, united in their desire to stand up against the silent racism that had tried to overshadow his special day. When Sarah walked down the aisle, her breath caught at the sight of the unexpected crowd. She beamed at Jason, and he smiled back, his heart swelling with love. Not just for her, but for the people who had chosen to rise above the pettiness and hate. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with heartfelt vows and tearful exchanges of rings. As Jason and Sarah walked out of the chapel as husband and wife, they were met with cheers and applause from their unexpected guests. But the true twist came at the reception. Sarah's parents had, of course, not attended the ceremony. But as the newlyweds began their first dance, the doors to the reception hall swung open. In walked Donna and Richard O'Connell, Sarah's parents, looking uncomfortable but determined. The room fell silent as they approached the dance floor. Donna, usually so composed, looked nervous as she spoke. "We made a mistake," she began, her voice shaky. "We let our own fears and prejudices blind us to what really matters, our daughter's happiness. We see now how wrong we were. Jason, Sarah, we're sorry." The room erupted in murmurs and all eyes were on the couple. Jason looked at Sarah, unsure of what to say. But Sarah, ever the kind soul, stepped forward and embraced her mother. "It's never too late to change," she whispered. As the evening continued, the once icy relations began to thaw. People who had once refused to attend found themselves embarrassed by their own narrow-mindedness. The wedding that had once seemed like it would be a lonely affair turned into a joyous celebration of love and unity. And as Jason looked around the room, he realized something profound. Love had the power to change even the hardest of hearts. The people who had once refused to accept him had been forced to confront their own biases. And in the end, love had won. The wedding wasn't just a union between Jason and Sarah. It became a symbol of something much bigger. A community finally learning that love and acceptance were stronger than hate. As the night wore on, the air in the reception hall shifted from awkwardness to genuine warmth. Jason, standing with Sarah by his side, took a moment to step back and soak in the scene. He had spent years quietly enduring the prejudice of the town he called home, but this was a turning point. Tonight wasn't just about him and Sarah, it was about everyone in the room seeing things differently. Donna, Sarah's mother, approached him once again, her eyes brimming with emotion. "Jason," she began, hesitating as if searching for the right words. "I judged you unfairly. I let fear guide me instead of my love for Sarah. I see now that you're the best thing that's ever happened to her." Jason nodded, though the hurt still lingered. He knew forgiveness wasn't easy, but it was the only way forward. "Thank you," he said quietly, offering a small but genuine smile. "It means a lot that you're here." As the evening progressed, the dance floor filled with laughter and celebration. Guests who had once stayed on the sidelines out of fear of judgment were now joining in, dancing and mingling with Jason and Sarah's families, as if nothing had ever been wrong. By the time the night drew to a close, the couple stood at the edge of the garden, looking out over the peaceful lake, the twinkling lights of the reception glowing softly behind them. Sarah leaned into Jason's shoulder, her hand wrapped tightly around his. "We made it," she whispered, her voice filled with contentment. Jason looked down at her, his heart full. "Yeah," he agreed softly. "We did." They had faced rejection, heartache, and the weight of the town's judgment, but in the end, love had proven more powerful. As they watched the last of their guests wave goodbye and drive off into the night, Jason knew that, while the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, they had taken the first step in changing not just their lives, but perhaps the future of Arlington as well. And that was a beginning worth celebrating. As Jason and Sarah stood together, gazing at the stars, they knew their love had triumphed over prejudice. With each challenge they faced, their bond grew stronger, proving that love and unity could break down even the deepest barriers. Their journey was just beginning, but they were ready to face it, together. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more powerful, emotional tales, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell.